Hey everyone, in this 40k thoughts video, or my thoughts on something in 40k, we'll be talking about scouting units, or units with the scouts keyword. Now, as an aside, I do not have a lot of experience using scout units. I more recently used or started using scout squads, but these are my thoughts on just them as a whole, the keyword, and then some experiences I've had with using units of mine and also dealing with units in the few times I have dealt with them in other armies. But with that out of the way, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Now, starting off with just scouting units, right, and my general thoughts on them. I think that similar to infiltrator units, like in my infiltrator video, they are useful at getting to a mid-board objective for board control, whether that be early game board control or you know whatever have you. Now, similar to infiltrators, they can be countered by your opponent's deployment. How they deploy units. If they have any infiltrator units, you're not going to really effectively be able to scout something up onto an objective, and that can be really unfortunate. It also can be very useful for getting dedicated transports up for one reason or another, right? Maybe you want to have your Rhino or your Impulsor just kind of really zoom up there because of scouts, giving the unit that's inside some extra free movement. Thanks to disembarking, giving him technically 3 more inches of movement. It can be very useful for getting on an objective, allowing that unit to safely maybe be tucked away early on, so that way they can do secondaries, cap an objective, or in the case of some primaries where they have to do an action on an objective, they can burn that objective or whatever have you. And most importantly, more than anything besides like how you can use them, is that they, on average, from my research of other faction scouting units and also from my experience using scout squads, they are pretty cheap. Units with the scouts keyword tend to be on average cheap, at least from what I can tell. Now, that could mean that they are pretty good at just being like throwaway kind of cheap trash, and obviously for some units or for some armies or some factions, their units that can scout are a lot cheaper than other faction units that have scout. Now, that's the truth for any army, whether we're with any keyword, whether we're talking about deep strike or infiltrate or fights first or whatever have you. But on average, scouting units tend to be cheap. Not every faction has access to scout keywords, and that could be either really painful or a mild annoyance. At least, and from my experience with playing Chaos Space Marines, we don't get scout units. I think the only way we can get Scout 6 at all is if we have Renegade Raiders and we take one of the enhancements. Now, moving on into my experiences with using units with the Scouts keyword or dealing with armies with the Scouts keyword, and this is very minor. I haven't too much experience with this, but with playing with units that use them is 2 units of 5 Scout squads in my Black Templar army. That's a more recent experimentation. Now I don't use them with the scouts keyword. I've used them with to infiltrate predominantly, or that's what I've primarily used them for. I experimented with Reaver squads in Space Marines with their scouting keyword because they can scout 6 inches. That was whatever. That didn't feel too good. Also didn't help that in that experimental game I got screened out to where I couldn't scout them up the board, so that was unfortunate. In terms of experience dealing with units with the scouts keyword, in my game against the Tau Empire before their Greater Good Army rule got updated, I played against an army that had 2 piranhas and 2 units of 10 Kroot Hounds. Some funny shenanigans ended up happening with some infiltrator keyword units along with the piranhas and Kroot Hounds in that match. So there were some weird like deployment / redeployment shenanigans that happened that caused me to deploy in a very disadvantageous way, and those piranhas almost took out my transport, my only transport, moving Fabius Bile with his Brick of 10 Chosen. which could have been very bad. But besides that, in the Tau Empire game, those piranhas weren't really much of an issue after the first turn. After they did their round of shooting and whatnot into my transports, nothing really came of it. Then they just got beat to death by a bunch of Legionnaires and Chosen. The Crude Hounds, likewise, they were able to capture an objective, I think one or two mid-board objectives, and then subsequently on the next turn afterwards just get gunned down by my two Predators that I had. With the last cannons, funnily enough, because these were Predator Destructors, and that was the Sponson weapons. And the only other game, or the only other faction I've had the fortune or misfortune of dealing with any scouting units was the Tyranids with Genestealers. 1 unit of 10 Genestealers. Now, that was a smaller size game. I believe it was a 1,000 point game. And my friend Jack was experimenting with the Genestealers. It was more of just like a giving them a try thing. Now I also, he and I both very well know that Genestealers can be very threatening in melee. They can be really deadly. Unfortunately for him, Black Templar Sword Brethren just kind of really messed things up, and he didn't get charges off. I was the one who got the charges off. That was what really didn't help him and caused his Genestealers to just get absolutely shredded. But I'm sure if circumstances were different or he was going first, that would have been a really bad time. But with that, guys, this is a quick little thoughts video on the Scout keyword. Don't have too much experience playing with them and dealing with the Scout keyword, but that's probably going to end up changing here in the future. My current Black Templars list has 2 units of Scouts, so I should get a lot more experience with scouting them up or using the infiltrator, using them to infiltrate, which is what I originally envisioned using them for. But thanks to them being able to do one or the other, it's given me a lot more flexibility with what I can, like how I can strategically use them. Like always, feel free to comment down below what your experiences are with scouting units. Have you had good games with your scouting units, whether that be, as Space Marines or as the Tau or Eldar or whatever faction you play? Have you had bad experiences with dealing with scouting units that just scout up and then really ram something not very comfortable into your face? Like always, let me know in the comment section down below if you'd like to see more content like this in the future. Feel free to like if you like the video, dislike if you dislike it. Feel free to subscribe. You don't have to, but it does go a long way to, support me. But with that, guys, hope you guys are having a great time wherever you may find yourself, whether you're at home, at school, or at work, or you're on your way home from both of those to home. Hope you're having a great time. And if not, if things are going poorly, well, I hope they can turn around and get better. But until that next time, guys, I'll see you next time. Peace.